Why is Blade Runner called the greatest sci-fi movie? Toshio Okada will thoroughly explain its secrets. Released in 1982, Blade Runner is Ridley Scott's representative work. It is based on Philip K. Dick's novel Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? A sci-fi landmark that depicts the boundary between artificial humans called replicants and humans. Toshio Okada shares the shock he experienced in theaters when the movie was released. After watching the film, he felt that the streets of Kabukicho looked just like the world of Blade Runner. A screenwriter named Hampton Fancher was deeply involved in the birth of this movie. He obtained the film rights to Philip K. Dick's work and wrote the screenplay. Blade Runner is the first designer cinema created using the layering technique. Toshio Okada provides sharp analysis on the sequel, Blade Runner 2049. He points out that whether the film has cuteness is the key to its success. While the previous film had a handmade feel in its special effects that contributed to its cuteness, 2049 lost that. He explains that the story of protagonist K can be interpreted as a tale of a fallen angel. The mystery of the child born from a replicant serves as the driving force of the story. What does it mean to be human? This masterpiece has posed that question for over 40 years. Please make sure to watch until the end.
This was Blade Runner, wasn't it? The feeling I had when I saw it was incredible, especially in the cinema. I didn't have any prior knowledge. Just a brief mention of the new Star Wars movie. And I was only looking at an article that was about 5 lines long, and I had heard just the title. Well, the shock was immense. Long ago, it seems Hayao Miyazaki watched Mothra in Shibuya when it was first released. He watched it in a theater in Shibuya, and Mothra is a story about destroying Shibuya. It destroys a meticulously crafted set of the streets of Shibuya. Also, unlike today's monster movies, where a monster stands up here, it wasn't like the city was about this high, but rather they built a miniature city that's bigger than a human height, with a giant Mothra that is about 8 meters tall crashing down and destroying it. And it is said that Miyazaki gathered his image of Omu from that. After watching Mothra, when he went out into the streets of Shibuya, he saw the city that had just been destroyed in the film all around, and reportedly felt a shock, asking himself, "What on earth did I just see?" I'm exactly the same. After watching Blade Runner, when I went to Kabukicho at that time, it was really the same scenery. It became an incredibly special movie for me. Today's talk is about this making of Blade Runner and the thick book I showed earlier, pulling various source material from that and giving various meanings to it. I want to talk about these aspects. Originally, Blade Runner was called by Paul Salmon, but according to the earlier book, it's referred to as designer cinema. Just like designer apartments or designer hotels are called designer cinema. It is said to be the first movie made using the layered technique. I will explain this later. In this book, there's a dedication to someone named Kenji, right? The dedication in this book states, it says, dedicated to Ridley Scott, Hampton Fancher, and Philip K. Dick, doesn't it? Ridley Scott, the director, Philip K. Dick is the original author. This is something that someone who knows a bit about SF would understand. It's the middle part, Hampton Fancher. I'm not quite sure about this. As for who Hampton Fancher was, we have plenty of time, so I'd like to talk about it slowly. Well then, let's start from the very beginning, with the trigger. Now, the 3 people mentioned in the dedication, Ridley Scott. This is Ridley Scott from the acting site. This is the man on the left. He now has a beard. And since he's an old man who will turn 80 this year, he has quite the presence. He was only 45 when he directed Blade Runner. Still quite young at that time. However, he was already a fairly successful director in the UK. When he came to Hollywood, he was somewhat nervous about making 2 films. Later, he ended up directing alongside Harrison Ford, which led to a big fight. Philip K. Dick is a science fiction writer. There are quite a few good photos of him. Philip K. Dick. This is the year Blade Runner was released in 1982. He died at the age of 53. And this is Hampton Fancher. This is a current photo of him. And he is still alive, at 79 years old. As for when this photo was taken, he often comes to science fiction conventions and Comic-Con events. After all, he is the producer and screenwriter of Blade Runner, so he is often invited as a guest. This photo was likely taken at Comic-Con or a science fiction convention, and he still seems to be doing well. This guy started the story by obtaining the film adaptation rights to Philip K. Dick's original work. To be precise, he didn't actually buy the film rights. Yinghua Hua Chen Omaita Wakeja Nine Desione. It's the one that got the option. This is the original work. Androids feel like they're dreaming of electric sheep. It's a story that comes up later, but in 1968. Actually, it's quite old. The original work of Whether Androids Dream of Electric Sheep was published in 1968, and it takes place in 1982. San Francisco in 1992. So, for us, it has become a world of the past. San Francisco is the setting. In the nuclear war, most of the Earth's animals have been exterminated, and most humans have gone off to space. The Earth is deserted. In contrast to Blade Runner, it's deserted and becoming barren. The humans who survived there have also survived on a radioactive Earth, and most of them have become infertile, with men being born with codpieces. I wonder if you understand what codpieces are. When you look at these medieval gentlemen, they're wearing something like a codpiece. If you watch Amadeus, you can see that the groin area is bulging in the tights. That is what is called a codpiece, a symbol of masculinity. Look how big my penis is. It's referring to the medieval sousing worn to show that. Medieval times were foolish. They did that. It's like wearing a derived version of that. Rick Deckard and the protagonist are not staff in San Francisco. They're actually exterminators under death sentences. So, a civilian, the protagonist, and their job is to kill androids that have disguised themselves as humans. Androids are referred to as Andes in this world. However, these androids have already blended into human society. They have mostly been hunted down, and there's rarely any work. So, they genuinely think, I want to kill androids quickly, I want to kill them. While seriously thinking about the protagonist, they feel like they're not earning much. So, the wife lives in the apartment with them, and to the wife, it's like they're always complaining that they hate this kind of life. And then, it's a big chance. The latest model, the Nexus 6, which is an android Andy, has escaped from Mars to San Francisco and is sneaking in. And then, yay, right now, Deckard is on the roof of his apartment, buying an electric sheep. He is buying a sheep made by machines. At that time, almost all animals were dying off. So-called everyone was getting imitation electric snakes, electric robots, you know. But the truth is, whether a movie is a hit or not depends greatly on how cute it is. Kubrick's movies are honestly not very cute. However, whether it's Star Wars or Blade Runner, in special effects movies, the ones that really make miniatures and struggle to shoot them, somehow or other, even in the previous Blade Runner where the spinner is flying through the buildings, it's kind of cute. They actually made miniatures and flew them. So the forced feeling is cute. It's not that because it's computer graphics. CG makes it not cute. Cars are definitely cute. Whether it's Cars or Toy Story, they are all properly cute. It's not that CG is bad, but rather, it's more like a little charm or something like that. Whether or not you project it on the screen is really important. So, the Avengers series is a hit in Japan. Batman vs. Superman, and then Justice League. There are DC comic adaptations, right? They're not cute. To put it plainly. Strangely enough, Mighty Thor is also cute, so of course I'm going to see it. Kate Blanchett has a really strange hairstyle, and when I saw it changing, I thought it was amazing and cool. But there's also something slightly cute in the drawing itself. So, this is surprisingly important. In that sense, Blade Runner 2049 is. In trying to take a Kubrickian approach, the screen lost its charm. It's possible to create the images you envision, but the previous Blade Runner relied on special effects, so the initial images couldn't be captured as intended. That charm, which was somehow masked with miniatures and compositing, has completely disappeared this time. I wonder why. Yet, if I want to show an incredible image, I really have to take my time, just like Kubrick, focusing on the composition and all. I really have to think for several days about it. But I shot it at a Hollywood-like speed, so it lacks charm. And there's no perfectly composed shot like those symmetrical compositions typical of Kubrick, which made it a somewhat undefined image. I thought that's where it gets dull. Kubrick never gets dull in that sense. Blade Runner 2049 is about, in a way, artificial life, with the protagonist being a robot replicant named K, played by Ryan Gosling. This K is doing the dirty work of hunting down and killing rogue replicants. When he returns home, there's a virtual reality girlfriend. He has a girlfriend named Joy. And with a bonus for killing a comrade, he upgrades Joy, which doesn't really mean go up, but makes him happy. That's how it begins. This introduction is quite well done. However, the executed replicant had hidden bones of another replicant, and upon digging them up, there were traces of a child being born from those bones. When I investigated why the replicants were able to give birth, it turned out one had escaped long ago. Well, in other words, for those watching the previous Blade Runner at this point, it appears that Deckard and Rachel, the two who escaped in the last film, had a child. When such a thing becomes clear, it's troubling for the police. Additionally, there's the company that manufactures the replicants, which comes up this time. Reparikanto ajoit te irowaishirto, iuno gajin fuichutero nakademo. From the perspective of the people at that company, it costs money to make replicants. And it also incurs costs. If that's the case, humanity should be able to go to other planets more and more. Is there a way to make replicants more cheaply? That's the situation. So, they suggested that replicants have sex, saying it would be best if they couldn't have children, and told me to explore the secrets of this planet. And while receiving conflicting orders, management is troubled, right? The higher-ups in the police, the replicant company, and then another separate organization emerge. A mysterious organization comes up, and these three are looking for Deckard, the protagonist who escaped at the end of the previous movie, Harrison Ford, right? They approach the reasons behind this search. However, management wants to search for something else. In fact, I might be that child. Various pieces of evidence come up in the movie, and I start to think that I might be a child born from that replicant, which stands in the middle of the movie. At this point, it creates a vector that moves the movie forward. In other words, it is both a journey of self-discovery for the protagonist and an action story. Around Las Vegas, they found